Many of you were listening last week when we had a couple wonderful activists on from the People's Water Board. They were beginning a walk from Detroit to Flint to bring light to a critical issue. That issue, obviously, is the right to clean, fresh water and access to that. As you are well aware, the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department has repeatedly and consistently continued to raise rates without offering relief to those that are having a difficult time paying their bill. What I find astounding about this is they are about to raise the rate again, and it is clear that they are not addressing the right for people to have access to water. So they begin this trek, this journey, if you will, starting on Friday, which was July 3rd. It will culminate this Friday, which is July 10th. Joining me now to let us know how they're doing, as I promised I would check in with them, is activist extraordinaire Kim Redigan. And Kim, I appreciate you being with us this morning and hope you're well.
Oh, it's my honor, Tony. It's our honor. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to check in and let you know how the walk's going.
Well, you know, I got to tell you, I got an extraordinary response to the interview that we did last week. And I think that there is finally a subset, if you will, of Southeast Michiganders that are finally realizing that what happens in Detroit affects all of us. Not to mention the fact that many of us get our water from the city of Detroit, which means when their bills go up, guess what? Ours go up too.
Right.
And so it's time we address this. But before we get to that, let's talk about how this is going. I understand things are going quite well.
They are. Thanks for again having us on the show. Today we're beginning day 6. I'm talking to you from Holly. We're going to get ready. We're starting a little later today. We're going to get ready to start walking in about a half an hour. And this is the takeaway, Tony. Everyone we talk to, everyone sees the need for some sort of water affordability. Once we explain the difference between affordability and assistance, once we explain the fact that water will keep running and that jobs will continue and that the betterment of all will happen if we make water affordable for people, based on the Roger Colton plan, right, the 2005 water affordability plan in Detroit. People get this once we explain it to them. So that's been very positive. And then also, I'd say we've had great discussions with people about privatization. We have not met a soul from Detroit to Highland Park to Clarkston to Holly. We have not met a soul who thinks that the commodification of water is a good idea. So those would be two things that I'd share.
Well, and I think it's important that we recognize, and I did not know this, and some of the outrage that I got from the audience was that there was a plan in place to subsidize those who are having a difficult time paying their water bill, and that money was never dispersed nor spent. And this just goes back to, Kim, an overall problem I have with politicians in general who tell you what you want to hear, even going to the extent of approving something that they know full well they're never going to put in place. And now we have this catastrophe. And this has become an international embarrassment. Embarrassment.
Yes, absolutely. And, the people of Michigan don't want this. See, I think what happens is politically there's been a decision to try to divide, right? City against suburb. Worthy bill payer versus, unworthy person who's not paying their bills. And I will tell you, Tony, there's more agreement in the state of Michigan than people know. There really is. Sunday night in Pontiac, we had a town hall meeting where voices from Flint, Highland Park, Detroit, and Pontiac were shared. There were at a minimum, 20 cities in that room and suburbs in that room. So this is not a city-suburban thing. This is not a black-white thing, although the undertones of racism are profound in the way that this is being framed. But this is, we want clean, affordable water for the people of Michigan. And if people think what's happening in Detroit, Highland Park, and Flint isn't going to come to a suburb near them, I think they're mistaken.
Well, it already has. Again, I'll just go back to the rates. You hear people bitch him all the time. My water bill's out of control and I have to stop using my sprinkling system. There's a reason for that. And here's the problem. You want to talk about that racial divide. And I'm just going to be honest about it. The white people in the suburbs are saying, oh, sure, now we're paying for the Detroiters' water because they're not paying their bills. So we have to subsidize that. We have to make up for what they're not paying, which is just BS to begin with.
That's
but
right.
You're right.
Look at the bank swaps. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
Oh.
It's the way that things are being framed. And I'll tell you, and I know, there's not a soul that we've encountered that says we need free water. I mean, people are not stupid. People know that, it costs money to process water and deliver water and so on. No one is asking for free water. We're asking for affordable water. And, the UN has said that really, about 2.5% of your income, no more than that really, should have to be water costs. And I'm sitting here right now with a pastor from Holly, and he's sharing with us. He has people here in Holly whose water bills are off the charts. People who are struggling to pay their water bill here in Holly. So yeah, I mean this is a big problem.
Well, Kim, as I and I think that this walk, this journey, this statement that you folks are on is important, and I want to remind people this will culminate on the Capitol steps, I believe, on Friday.
Correct.
And it'll be interesting to see how anybody responds to that, because you and I both know Governor Snyder has not yet said a single word on this issue, not one public word on this issue, not to mention the catastrophe in Flint, what they did with the water there, how they're literally making people sick and maybe killing people with the water in Flint. And the governor has been completely silent.
Well, completely silent, except for the fact that there's been an imposition of emergency managers in these places. I think that, we have to always get the context of this in terms of emergency managers, in terms of structural adjustment plans. I mean, there's a bigger context to this, and which is why this whole journey, we're not saying it's going to end in Lansing. This is where it's going to begin, because we need legislative change. I mean, we're going to Lansing to lay this at the feet of the governor, where we need legislative change. And some of that, I think, is being hammered out. I mean, we do have our allies. It's going to be an uphill battle, but, I really think that there's more support for some of the legislation that we'd like to see than people know. People out in these small towns here, they want water affordability. When we explain the plan, it's like it makes imminent sense. It keeps people's water flowing. I mean, it makes sense.
What would the plan look like, Kim Redigan, if we were to actually get a lawmaker that would have the stones to stand up and do something about this? Mm-hmm. What would that plan look like? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay, I would say, I mean, and again, I'm not a policy expert, but I would say...
And I'm not asking you to be. This is your opinion. You and I are talking, so...
Okay, I'd say first we need to look closely at what's going on in Philadelphia right now. I think Philadelphia is moving in a good direction, and I think we need to look at that closely. I would also say that, we have the model. Roger Colton's an economist, and he is the person who put together, worked with Michigan Welfare Rights to put together the 2005 Water Affordability Plan. I think we'd want to look at that as our template. I mean, it's not just some vague abstract idea. It is hammered out. The details are hammered out. You can go to the Michigan Welfare Rights webpage and read that report in its entirety. And what it would be is, again, an income-based payment plan, affordability plan. We have food programs that are income-based. We have housing programs that are income-based. So why would we not have something as essential as water, be accessible via an affordability plan? We want assistance. We need affordability.
And I agree with that. And, no one's looking for a handout. As you said, nobody's asking for free water. In fact, I've never heard anybody even suggest that. And in some situations, if you've got a family, let's for a minute focus on three communities, Detroit, Highland Park, and Flint. All of them have suffered under the tutelage of the dictators that are emergency managers. All of them have privatized services from school to water, etc. All of them continue to suppress a predominantly African-American community where industry moved out decades ago, and jobs are unavailable for the people that live in those communities. They can't afford to stay and they can't afford to leave. And yet they continue to ignore the very rights of these people. And that's where my gravest concern is that, you know, education is constitutionally guaranteed. The right to water is internationally recognized as a human right. A human right. You know, it's not just, hey, it'd be cool if we had running water in our house and we knew it was safe. And when I washed, I'm not going to get bumps all over my body and rashes. You know, what year is it, Kim Redigan? Is it 1904 or is it 2015? Because I'm getting the impression we are going backward with the passing of every calendar day.
Well, I agree. I mean, like I say, this is about much more than water. This is about much more than water. And, you know, I don't even know how to begin to answer that question. I don't even know how to begin to answer that question when, you know, we the people have been canvassing door to door. I was helping with that a little last year. And when you talk to people, when you see home after home after home where people's water is either cut or about to be cut, where they're losing their homes to foreclosure and, again, attaching the water to the houses, I mean, it begins to look like something that, you know, has been called genocide. I mean, it really does. I mean, I hate to use that term, but that's what it looks like. You know, you see entire neighborhoods where it looks like people are, like the neighborhood is being shut down. I mean, it's beyond words. I mean, that's one reason I think we've taken this walk is to listen to people and to share with people and say, look, you better wake up because this is serious. This is really serious.
Well, it is very, very serious. You know, I'm interested as you're doing these town halls or rallies or whatever they are along this journey. Are people showing up that aren't familiar with the issue and are being enlightened and educated? Are you finding any pushback at all as well? Are you having people showing up and saying, oh, come on, get over it, just, you know, move on? I'm curious what kind of reaction you're getting and where you're getting it from.
Well, I mean, the town halls have been, you know, we had 4 events in Detroit on Friday, and then we had the big event in Pontiac on Sunday. But then in between, I mean, we've been, you know, churches have been giving us hospitality. So we've had small groups of people coming in. The other night we had a handful of people come in, and we showed them the ACLU video that was just done on the water in Flint, and we showed them the United Nations made a good video after they were here last year, the 2 rapporteurs on the water. We showed them that and just had discussion. I mean, we have handouts. I'm a teacher, so that's my second nature. You get a handout and some discussion, and so we've really been having small discussions with people and explaining the difference between assistance and affordability, connecting the threat of emergency managers. You know, it's been more small group, and frankly, really, Tony, I'm surprised. We have not gotten a lot of resistance at all. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot. We really haven't encountered any. We've had people curiously, you know, they're curious. They pulled their trucks or cars over and said, oh, we saw this happening on the news. What's going on? And some of them will say things like, well, but, you know, how can, you know, you got to pay for the water somehow. I mean, they've kind of been given the line that people want free water. And once we unpack for them, you know, the difference between assistance and affordability, a light bulb goes on and people will say, God, I wish we had that in our suburb. There was a woman from Sylvan Lake we talked to, and she said, I wish I had a water affordability plan. You know, she was in, I forget where she was. Now she's on a well, you know, she's got her own well, but she said when she was paying for municipal water, she said, I wish I had a water affordability plan out in the suburbs. So we're looking at this as a mandate for the whole state of Michigan. I mean, doesn't it make sense to you?
Well, of course. And Kim, even people that are on a well, there's an expense to that. And, you know, we now are very concerned because fracking has become an issue in the state of Michigan. We have chemicals leaching into these wells. You know, there are some significant problems there. It just seems to me, listen, Kim, you've been an activist a long time. You have sacrificed and done such amazing work. You're talking about these small groups. That's what grassroots means to me. Grassroots isn't 10,000 people showing up. Grassroots is
Right.
5 people showing up. And I would rather empower and educate 5 people that get it than have 1,000 people show up that don't get it. And
well,
so,
I agree. Yeah. I mean, and the other point of this walk is to listen to people, Tony. I have to share with you, when we were in, keep forgetting, what's the town right outside of Pontiac? It's a blur, and excuse me, I'm very tired. I'm not feeling very articulate here, but when we were leaving Pontiac, a man pulled up in his pickup truck, and he said, "Oh, I saw you guys on the news. You're walking to Flint." And we said, "Yeah." And he said, "I live in Flint." And so, of course, we asked him, what's the water situation like for you? And he said, "I refuse to give this water to my cats. I refuse to water my plants with this water." And we asked him, "So what are you doing for water?" And he says, "Well, I'm paying high water bills, and I'm spending about $200 a month on bottled water." And he said, "I don't even believe in bottled water, but we have no option." So, and I think part of this walk is to let people know, to give them a voice, to let them share their stories. And we've been hearing stories from people like this. And it really corroborates with the information that activists in Flint and other places are giving us. I mean, just random people all kind of telling the same story.
Well, you stop and you think about the coalition of people that are on our side, if you will, public health workers, hospital workers, certainly local politicians, council members, county commissioners. You take a look at the faith community, how supportive they are. You look at the thousands of people that have donated bottles of water to residents in the city of Flint. And you start to, add those numbers up. And I guess this is where I go a little insane, because this is one of those issues where I think the vast majority of people are with us. The better and the more effectively we educate them, the more passionate they come to our side. Yet those that can make the decisions, Kim, to stop this, stay silent and do nothing.
It's utterly frustrating. I mean, there's a gap between policy and people on the ground that is enormous. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, you've got bad policy and good people, and they don't meet.
No, they don't meet.
We know that we have some lawmakers who are working on legislation. We do know that, and this is where the call needs to be. I mean, we need to have a full force of people turn out in Flint at 10 a.m. on Friday for the final rally, and then get on a bus or carpool to Lansing. So that's number one. Number two, we really, when some of this legislation is going to be introduced, we need to get behind those lawmakers, and we need to hold them accountable and help and embolden them. And then we also need to really help make this happen. We've got litigation. Our great lawyer, Alice Jennings, her case, we need to stand, the ACLU has put forth some things. We need to stand with our lawyers. We need to stand with our lawmakers. And we really, really need to stand with people on the ground who have answers and are not being listened to.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Kim, target, ground zero on this for me is Mayor Mike Duggan. And he certainly could solve this with a simple paragraph statement. And yet he continues to just give us verbiage and no leadership at all. And I am tired of this kind of hypocrisy, as I see good men and women being forced out of desperation to turn their water back on so that they can provide for their families. And yet this man who claims to be the great white knight does nothing to help the very basic needs. And let me remind this audience, Kim, the people that never gave up on the city of Detroit, that stayed when many thousands left, they didn't. And this is how they're repaid.
I agree completely. I mean, the criminalization of people who, are only trying to provide for their families. I mean, what would you do? I mean, would you break a window to go into a store to, to put out a fire if there were babies in that building? I mean, I would just ask that kind of question. You know what I mean? The criminalization of people who are trying to preserve life is another matter that needs to be attended to. But I don't understand this. I really don't. And I don't understand the mayor's position. I mean, I myself, I don't live in Detroit. I live in Dearborn Heights, right on the border. Dearborn Heights, Redford, Detroit come together. My congresswoman was moved to tears. Julie Pilecki, I was proud of her. We were in Lansing for public hearing. We had people from Flint, Highland Park, and Detroit giving public hearing. And she was moved to tears. And she said, not on my watch will this happen. We need more of that. You know, and I'm going to meet with her when we get back from this walk and encourage her to go forward and, you know, in fleshing that into legislation to provide for this. This can't go on.
Well, Kim, and I'm glad that you said that because, you know, listen, I'm sure Representative Pilecki truly was moved. I was watching, totally unrelated, the subject matter is irrelevant. I was watching a YouTube video the other day. There were some lawmakers that were in Alabama that were looking to put a bill in place that would have been highly discriminatory. And this young man shows up, gives this beautiful testimony from his heart. It was great. And these senators said, oh, my God, this was wonderful. One of the women started crying. It was beautiful. And then they all voted for the bill that, of course, affected this young man's life. So I appreciate the dialogue. Love the tears. Glad that she's got passion. But if she doesn't do something about it, all they are words.
Well, she came out Friday to our rally in Detroit and spoke about, you know, we're going to move forward on this. So we really do need to talk to people and really, you know, hold people's feet to the fire and say, you know, we'll walk with you on this, but this can't be watered down. It can't be, you know, it can't be compromised. I mean, we need to keep water on for people. I mean, that's the bottom line. And we cannot sell this beautiful, precious resource off. I mean, that for me is a terrible thought. And we know privatization doesn't work. And we know that that's a direction that, you know, that things are going in here. And how do we stop that train? There's not a person I've talked to, not a person on this walk, and because we asked them, who think that any kind of privatization is a good idea. When you talk about the common good and you talk about water as a commons, it should be a shared resource. It's something that, you know, communities need to steward. That's language that resonates with people. They get that.
Well, they do get that. You know, they really do. Kim, let's make sure that we get together next week when all of this is over. Let us know what happened at the Capitol on Friday and, you know, figure out a way to really push this forward. Again, I'll give Representative Pilecki all of the platitudes she deserves if indeed she does step up in the way it sounds like she's doing. She's, of course, not going to be able to do this alone. But with all that said, Kim, I do want to remind this audience, ultimately, we are the government, you and I and everybody listening to this program right now. And if we want change, sometimes you have to demand it. And just getting angry about something doesn't solve the problem. You've got to show up, folks. You've got to show up. So very quickly, on Friday at the Capitol, what time do you folks plan to be there? So if people want to come to the Capitol on Friday, 1 o'clock. All right.
We'll be there at 1. And I just quickly want to say, Tony, if I have 1 minute here.
Sure you do.
Well, this is the 1-year anniversary of the transition of the woman we call the Rosa Parks of the Detroit Water Movement, who is Charity Hicks. It was 1 year ago today that she died. She was she nonviolently resisted the shutoff of her own water and was arrested and roughed up. And we looked to her, and she was a great environmentalist. And so today we've been carrying her spirit with us through this whole walk. But today, in a very special way, her mandate to us, shortly before she was struck down in New York City, her mandate was that we fight this fight, but we do it in a way in which we are always waging love. I mean, those were her resonating words to us: wage love, wage love. You know, do it with tenacity, do it with strength, do it with a resolute spirit, but we've got to do it with the spirit of love. And we're hoping that this walk really, you know, we have intentionally carried her picture with us and those words of wage love with us.
That's awesome. Kim Redigan, that was awesome. I'm glad that you shared that. And I'm glad that we had the time to let you share that, more importantly. Best of luck. Please send my love to everybody there, and we will make sure that we connect next week and continue on the journey to make sure that this issue is addressed responsibly, that people can get and afford the water that they absolutely need. Not want, but need. And I think we're going to win this one, Kim Redigan. I truly do.
I do too. We're on the right